Hi, Seshu. How you doing?
Hey, hi Tim.
Good. I can hear you. I guess you can hear me, right?
Yes, yes. Now loud and clear. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Hey, thanks for joining, by the way.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. Sure. So you're in the face-to-face discussion right now? Are you running it in
Yeah,
person?
yeah. So, yeah, except I'm in my hotel room.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Should be
Good.
talking cluster templates with working group one.
Okay.
Where are you at?
I'm in Singapore, Fusion at Asia event.
Oh, goodness. So how much time do you spend on the road, Seshu?
On what?
How
On
much time do you spend on the road?
on the road.
Yeah.
Well, depends actually. I mean, I've been across everywhere. Are you talking about my travel or?
Yeah, just traveling. Yeah, yeah, that's what I was referring to. How much
Yeah,
time are
okay,
you
okay.
spending?
Yeah, I mean, this month has been crazy, but I was in Denver, then from there to California, from there to Bangalore, from there to Hyderabad, then Mumbai,
Oh my
then to
goodness.
Singapore, and now again I have IMC next week. I have IMC, India Mobile Congress, right? That's in New Delhi.
Okay. Wow.
I'm from
All right.
IMC again Mumbai, by the way. IMC to Mumbai, from there to Bangalore.
Okay. Well, that's not so bad. At least, well, that's at least staying in domestic airlines, at least, right?
Right, right. That is domestic, but no, I'm talking about the events which are actually there. We have to go with customers. We have to go with
Yeah,
partners and presentations and all that. And everything is a different theme, right? Themes are changing. Like, Nefio was the different theme, FutureNet is a different theme, IMC is a different theme. If it was the same content, it'll be easy, but unfortunately, it's not the case, right?
yeah, but it's the same people, right?
That's true, actually. You got the right point, by the way. At least I can say you see the similar faces, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Aspirations are same.
I had a friend that was, did standards for years, and when I was with Nokia, he said it was the same clowns, different circus.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's true. That's true. Especially OSS, it is always the same, right? I mean, as I said,
Yeah, yeah,
it's the same faces that you see. It'll be two or three new faces which will be added, but otherwise, it's the same rotation which just goes on and on and on.
yeah. So just to let you know, I did get some. I'm going to do an overview, get everyone level set, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was some responses from Robbie on the SMO track and the SMO trying to figure out what that summit is. So you might want to look at those areas. But I think effectively what he's asking for is uh, I think what he's asking for is let me get back to the epic. Sorry.
Sure, no problem. Take your time.
Uh,
By the way, on this, while you're trying to get it up, I've had a POC run on this in the month of May, exact time when Alexi was preparing the other one. I mean, as I said, we both are alter egos, me and Alexi. So
mhm.
I made something on Starling X, which was a POC which got a lot of appreciation across the globe. I mean, I took it to a lot of communities and all. That will also come handy for us because,
Yeah, that's what Alexa said. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
unfortunately, after that, I became pretty busy. And I mean, this timings of it, right? I mean, the timing of Nefios are always, that's odd one for me.
right.
So that didn't happen. I mean, again, thanks to this time of it, thanks to you and Alexi to select this time of it. Though I'm in Singapore right now, it's 11 a.m. I mean, 11 p.m. Sorry. But once I'm back to India, it'll be good for me. It's at least somewhere around 8:30 p.m.
Yeah, that's what
Uh,
we were trying to do because
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
want it to get too late to where, everyone's dealing with it in Asia and in Europe time or,
mm,
at midnight, right? Um,
exactly.
but so on this objectives and, Robbie had this comment that
Hmm.
basically what I did is and I'll explain this to the group, is like, as people were talking to me in the Nepio meeting, I tried to distill what it is that they wanted from Nepio the next year. And I put them down into these things. All this can change. I might have got it wrong, but at least it gives talking points. But one of the things Ravi was concerned about was how Nepio ran into the end-to-end architecture. And you can
Mm.
see there's some stuff in here like Subhash had for his future architecture that eventually we have to get down to. But I think what we are going to have to do is, if you can look at that, look at Robbie's comments on this
Sure, sure.
integration objectives, and because he's got some questions with specific
Mm.
about how much of the same questions I had, right? How much of the SMO are we really talking about here,
Right,
and
right,
where
right.
does that fit in the larger orchestration?
Right.
So
Actually, one more thing on the similar thing. If you go to slide number 3, right? Slide number 3, we are talking about OCloud. Slide number 3, the next slide.
yeah,
So here we have three tracks we are talking about, right?
right.
So ideally speaking, Nefio will not be OCloud. Nefio will be enabled for OCloud.
Yes, so we can do cloud enablement track, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes, yes.
I
Because
don't care. Yeah,
yeah, because if you say OCloud, you have to run it on Nefio is what you have to run the payload. Well, Nefio will not run payload on itself. Nefio will enable the payloads to be run on a cloud, right?
yes, that's right.
So people are misunderstanding to put Nefio as a OCloud itself. No, Nefio is not a OCloud. Okay. Nefio is that element which will enable you to put your target. It could be FOCOM or it could be the NFO. That should be clear. Somewhere, I mean, I see this statement coming again in the mail which was sent, I guess, right, where they were saying Nefio OCloud and AIF being the what was that? The network element and all. So that's where we should be very clear. I mean, when you say Nefio as OCloud, then people it'll lead us to different ball game altogether.
Yeah,
Which
but
is like,
there's when I talk about, excuse me just a second.
yeah, sure.
When I talk about the cloud track,
Mm,
right?
mm.
It's really, again, you're still going to deploy on a Google Cloud, you're going to deploy on, some telecom cloud, wherever, right? But you're going to
That's
be
what,
using the Nepio, the IMS, particularly in the DMS
exactly. That's what
that
I'm
we care
saying.
about.
It's an
Yeah,
enabler. So you're
yeah,
talking about the IMS DMS as a client here. So that is actually part of the SMO, right? In the long run, it's an orchestration piece, I would say. It's the piece which goes to the orchestrator. So that way it makes sense, and it is right. It is absolutely right, right? So we should be a little careful in choosing the words there. Otherwise, the problem with those words is if you say it's OCloud, right, and keep it there, then people will think, okay,
yeah,
now is it you're getting where it goes, right? It goes into different trash actually. I mean, it goes into different discussion altogether.
yeah. Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So yes.
So
And
yeah. So when we go through this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show everyone basically the things that we want to try to do, because I want to try to get to the point where we can say what we do, then do what we say. So
yeah,
basically come up with the objectives, and that's what this is. And then that will be, as if we had, the operator saying, look, this is what I want to see. This is our message to the industry, once we
yeah,
distill what
yeah,
we want to see, right?
yeah.
And
That's very
then
important.
and then we want to talk about taking those into various tracks, right? And then we're going to have definitions of defined of these things. We'll have people start um, building in their epics and user stories, right, for it. And I think that'll be the track
Yeah.
guys. Cloud enablement. But effectively, then what happens is once we get those stories and epics as along with that, the other thing that we have to do is we have to come up with um, an architecture and a deployment architecture similar to what we take this similar to what Subash has, right? For each of the different tracks.
Subhash thing we have to
But
refine again. Subhash thing should be refined. I mean, that cannot be
oh
taken as it
yeah,
is.
yeah, I'm not saying take that. This is all
I
open,
know.
right? So you guys got to
Because
fill that out, right?
yeah.
But the point is that we want this type of information that was provided for release 2, right? So
Hmm.
we're going to want these same. I'm going to make this release 2, R2. So I would expect to have, for each track, I would expect to have, what is the architecture? How does it map? What is the
Hmm.
blueprint? and what is the operators. And then we can take all that back to the network architecture team and say, this is what we're doing in 2024, right? And they say, yeah, no, or this probably will say, thank you very much, and we'll move on, right? And that way you have now everything you need to start doing your design work and development work within the, the GitHub, tracking, right? So you become basically Scrum leaders, right?
Yeah.
So that's my thought.
What we can also do, I mean, I can be that enabler for this, or the license or ambassador, whatever we want to call it, and there are different names to it. I can also get the feedback of the OSC, which will be critical, because OSC also has those expertise, right? Those people.
Right.
You may not find them in Nefio, because Nefio is put on the orchestration piece, but the people who are coming from bottom up, right? I mean, they are critical, isn't it? We were talking about, by the way, you're also making the right point of it in our Nefio R2 meeting also, that we need both the hands to come together and make a clap, right? So we need people from bottom up, we need people from top down, that is applications understanding the cloud, as well as by applications, I mean XApps, RApps, the RICs and all, right? The Gnode base. Also people who are coming from Yang models, because these people are also the enablers for that, right? So we need to have the bridging between us, and that I can provide from the other side of it, right? OSC, I can take it to OSC, I can talk to the people over there, the operators on the other side, who don't participate here. For example, AT&T, you don't see them in the Nefio side, but they're very active on the I mean, CMCC, AT&T, right? Those operators I'm talking about.
Right.
So that should be critical. Without that, the problem would be that we may go with some assumptions, and the assumptions need not be always true, right? So let's clarify it as we build it, and that will be critical again, right?
Yeah. So that's right. And so this is the roadmap. I'll have to bring up the roadmap too. That's a good point. Was that effectively what we'll do is we'll take all those stories, we'll put them into a particular release.
Yeah.
Cloud enablement track. Enablement track. All right. And so what we'll do here, I guess I can now say OSC, right? Before I was hesitant, but I'll fix that.
Yeah, now I'm there. I'm officially part of OSC, so you can absolutely put OSC broad and in bold and highlight it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll make that OAI and FBO OSC, and the whole idea is that, I would hope that you would take, as Sagar will talk about OAI, and you'll be the OSC contingent, and if we have ORAN, I'll do that, right? ORAN specification, I can handle that piece of it, or Alexis can, right? And then of course run the Nefio community.
I mean, ORAN can be any of us. OSC, I'll be there, and OAI, anyways, we have Sagar, so that will be really good. I mean, good that we have.
You don't do much in the. Do you do anything in the ORAN?
Yeah, workgroup 6 is where I am. Workgroup 6 is where I am.
Okay, because I don't see you active in that one. So.
Yeah, I mean, Udi is the one who is actually representing us, but I'm also discussing on that because I'm into everything, right? I'm spread across everything, and also this travel. So I don't see you. But workgroup 1 is also something. By the way, I work very closely with David Kenzie and Ritvik Jana, both from us.
But Alexis and I are actually, we're personally active in both, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Is that it probably just makes it easier.
Yeah, of course. I'm adding to that. One is on the standard body, other is the implementation body, right? The OSC versus ORAN. I'm coming from that angle.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah, right. Because I'm not active in the code side.
So
right?
By ORAN, I mean I didn't mean the ORAN Alliance versus ORAN SC. I'm talking about ORAN as a whole, right?
Yes.
I mean, you cannot separate one from other, right? That's what I'm talking about. And by the way, we also have a digital food feedback loop which goes all the time between the OSC to this, and also the OAF part of it, right? Which is also critical for that. The OSGC, the OAF, there are mainly multiple things on it. Also, I'm also licensed between the ONAP and the ORAN. Okay, where what we try to do is we try to see the bridging of certain orchestration elements which can be taken. Again, I don't want to talk about the code, but the concepts. Okay, I want to be very clear on this. I'm not talking of taking the code and dumping over there, but we'll take the concepts from them and put it there, right?
Well, I think that's a network architecture. I think that's outside this track, by the way, but there may very well be a network architecture Nefio thing that says what happens up in this area, up in this upper area, right?
Yeah,
where you have, but I'm not, I think we want to keep that out of the ORAN track, right?
No. I agree. I'm not on work group 2 here. I'm just telling you what I do as part of the other thing also.
Yeah. No, yeah, I get it. I was just saying that I do think that that's got to be talked about. I just don't want that to start getting into the.
No. This is overall picture I'm talking about because you're talking about the work group 1, right? I'm in
Yes.
the architecture part, it's certainly required. And that is something which can also, I was just giving an analogy of how it works, right? The way I said ORAN is one body for me, where OS is implementation part, ORAN is the SDO part. Similarly, even in the orchestration piece, if you take ONAP will be there as a guidance value, not as a code of it. And that will actually define, that's gonna give us what went wrong and what can be better, right? I'm just putting a reference of it.
Oh yeah. I got what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah.
I was taking it one step further though, is I think Nepio network architecture as a different activity may want to look at how they deal with those upper layers.
Yes.
Right. And I'll leave it at that.
By the
right?
way, see, end of the day, you will not have, I mean, let's be very, very factful to this, right? You will not have a network service which is only deployed on CNFs alone. Okay, we talk about it a lot.
Sure. Yeah, right.
We talk about it a lot everywhere, but between you and me, at least I can say this open, right? That only CNFs, it's
Oh,
impossible.
by the way,
You
we're being
require-
recorded, by the way. I'm
God.
not, I'm not claimed. So everything we've said so far has been recorded in the cloud. So
That's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't say anything. We didn't scold anyone. Or we didn't add anything nasty to each other.
No.
At least.
And I
Absolutely fine.
see
But
Sharon
again,
and
let's be
we're
frank
getting
that
some people joining here. Hey guys,
yeah, hi guys.
Hey guys,
we're going to give everyone
what we
about.
missed so far. So
I was just talking to Seishu because I wanted to open up the bridge to make sure it could open. So I opened
And
it
I
up at
jumped in.
7:45 and Seishu joined, so we've been chatting.
That's again because Sharon, I'm in Singapore, so the early this meeting happens, the early I can hit the bed. So
oh yeah, very good.
We're going to give everyone about 2 more minutes to come in, and then we'll get started.
Yeah,
I had to drop at the bottom of the hour. Unfortunately, I had a clash I couldn't get rid of. But
Okay.
I'll listen back to the recording for anything I missed anyway. So
yeah. So Sharon, you're back to Europe. I mean, you're back to Ireland.
yeah, we flew back on Thursday evening, Friday morning, arrived back in. So
Sure, great.
you're
Yeah,
doing your around the world trip here, are you? Or
yeah, I'm in Singapore right now. I'm in the FusionNet Asia actually. I'm here for the FusionNet Asia event.
very good. Singapore's a lovely city.
Yeah, and next week I'll be in IMC again, India Mobile Congress.
Cool.
Hello.
Yeah, hi Vishwa.
Good morning.
Hi, Susha. Hi, Tim.
All right, we're starting to get. Looks like we're getting everyone in here. Okay. So
Yeah, because I was going to ask, there's a ORAN, some meeting going on in Phoenix, I mean, in Arizona.
Yeah, that's what I'm in a hotel room. Probably Lexus is in a hotel room, but
Yeah, exactly the same here.
yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
let's see.
So I think let's get started. So this is the working group 2 ORAN initial. Well, the second meeting. The first one was for the summit, but this is our weekly meeting. And so we went through a process to decide, what is the best time. We chose through the poll that Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time is a good time. So we'll do this on a weekly cadence, guys. What I'll do is I'll put the agenda out. The agenda will be here, and I'll show you where everything's at so that you know where everything's at. We'll do a real quick round of what's out there right now. And what you can do is, as you want, if there's agenda topics, we can put agenda topics, and then the first thing that we'll do coming in, we'll agree on the agenda, right? So the first agenda really is the first point that I have is really just discussing what is it that coming out of the Nepio Summit, what is it that we want to do? But before that, I wanted to give you guys really just look at what's already there, so that we can start filling in some of the content that we need in order to make a determination of what we want to do. Okay. All right. So first, the second point is that these meetings are being recorded in the cloud. So just to let you know that everything's being recorded. So if you do not want to be recorded, it's probably the best time to drop is now. Okay. All right. So again, if you look at the Google Drive, the SIG network architecture drive, you're going to find our little folder where we're going to live in within ORAN, right? For the working group 2 ORAN. So we're part of the SIG network architecture, the SIG1 network architect or SIG network architecture, and we're working group 2 for ORAN. And what I did is I have at the beginning of the drive, what you'll see is an ongoing list of agenda and notes, just like what we see in SIG automation. So each week we'll just add a new, a new agenda set with a set of notes, and then that will be in decreasing order. And if it gets too long, then we'll create a folder and we'll split it up. But you'll be able to see the top current one all the time at the beginning of it. The next point is that what I did is I broke up three major areas. One is talking about planning and roadmaps. So it's basically saying, what is going to be in release 3, what's going to be in release 4, and, create a roadmap out of it, right? So it's more of an administrative piece. Excuse me, just a second. Based upon the items that really come out of this objectives and ethics and deployment architecture. And so, what's that at? Oh, got 2 of those, don't I? Let's get rid of that one. Sorry. So when you get into plannings and roadmaps, what you'll see is if there's a roadmap piece, what I'll do is I'll try to keep up. Oh, it's the roadmap piece. Okay, so should say roadmap. Sorry. Roadmap. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll try to keep this up based upon what is provided, talking about the roadmap as well as what's going to go into release 3 and release 4. I think what we want to try to do initially is try to figure out what we want to do in 2024, which is release 3 and release 4. Okay. The other thing that you'll see in this is this objectives and ethics, and so this is where we'll say what from an industry perspective, what we're going to do and what we're telling the industry. And that's why I started these objectives with seeded this objectives. This is, you guys will fill this out, right? And or as a team, we'll fill this out. But I seeded it with things that I heard in the Nefio face-to-face meeting that we had last week. And so that was my attempt at seeding this. I see Robbie had some questions, and we can have those discussions. And that's really what I want to spend most of the day on. But effectively, then what you do is what we will do is we'll take what we're going to do, and probably we break them down into 3 different tracks, right? We'll break them down into a sorry, I only have one screen, guys, so it's
maybe you can put in presentation mode, Tim. That will be helpful.
Well, then I'm gonna go full screen. That's the problem, and then I'll lose all this other stuff.
Yeah,
so that's why. So
sure,
just bear with me, guys. So it's like, okay. So we're gonna break this down into 3 tracks, right? And so there'll be an SMO track, and whatever we come out of, whatever we decide here, will come into this SMO track. We'll have a ORAN NF track where we'll deploy the NFs. We'll identify some O1 implementation, whatever comes out of there, right? So we'll have an NF track, and then we'll have an O Cloud enablement track. Excuse me. And as Seishu made known, is when I talk about the O Cloud, it's the O Cloud enablement. Nefio is a set of tools. It's not a cloud itself, right? So it's using the enablement. It's enabling the O Cloud using Nefio is the best way of saying it, right? So once we figure out what goes into what tracks, we'll probably have the small team meetings in those tracks, right? Because they're going to be, this is a big problem that we have to kind of split up, right? Okay, so we'll probably work those things into 3 separate tracks of what we're trying to do. Once we get these objectives in here, we'll identify on a per track basis what are going to be our epics, and then define what our epics will be. Epics can go across releases, guys. So, and then we'll have user stories, and I think the user stories will want to have at least scope minimally to a release, right? So we'll identify those epics and user stories based upon the objectives that we want to accomplish and what goes into what track, okay? Then, once we have that, I think at that point, we're able to tell the industry what we'll be doing when in 2024. What we also have is this other area of the deployment architecture, which is the second piece. So we learned this when we did the release 2 of the ORAN. There's basically 3 things that is of interest to other SIGs, like SIG automation will be interested in this. Network architecture is interested in this, the general network architecture, and frankly, the industry is interested in this as well. So this is an important thing that we'll do once we identify, or as we are identifying those stories. I think what we'll have is a release 3 architecture that we want to map to. We'll have to create a set of blueprints. I don't think we need this level of detail to begin with, obviously, but we want to identify certainly the interfaces, what clouds that we're going to need, that type of thing, right? And then we're going to talk about what operators that we've identified of what we're going to deal with, right? I think if we have all that, we have the content that we need to communicate what we're doing to SIG automation, and SIG network, and even external entities as well. So does anyone have any questions or comments with that approach?
Looks good to me. Thanks, Tim.
If I may, first, thank you very much, Tim, for taking that leadership for this group and setting these things up. My only comment is, I like the track approach, but can we make sure we only start dividing into tracks when we feel the need to? And I don't know how it's going to evolve, right? But I want to make sure we don't start breaking out too soon. I think we need to have a good common understanding before we break into tracks of common understanding of what we want to achieve.
Alex, a good point. But I think what Tim is trying to say is we will have a brainstorm before we put into it. It's not that we directly end up in the tracks as we go. I mean, not from the day go, right? That's the understanding I have.
That's right. We'll at a certain point, I'll ask the question again. Are we ready to start tracks? Right, and then we can determine what that means. We might even think that there isn't any need to do tracks, or we can do this in 2 tracks. So, I see Bala, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, thanks to me. I want to echo some of what Alexis said. Thanks for taking the leadership on this one. And I was kind of seeing your 3 tracks and kind of couldn't help but thinking how it kind of aligns with the 3 swim lanes of Nepio, which is configuration management, infrastructure management, and the orchestration itself. So it kind of aligns well in that, more or less. So that is one thing. The other thing I wanted to, since it kind of aligns with the 3 swim lanes of Nepio, probably from the release perspective, we also need to align with the priorities of the Nepio release itself. For example, the first release was focusing on the swim lane 2. And then obviously we introduced other concepts as well with other swim lanes. And then kind of aligning this with the overall story that we want to tell in the a particular Nepio release itself will be great. So that's where we need to have the synergy with the SIG automation group as well, in terms of if this is the swim lane that we are focusing on in the particular release, then probably that's where we need to focus as well from this group.
Yeah, and so that's the idea, Bala, is that I think once we get done with the objectives and ethics, right? Those identifications of what we think we want to do in 2024, we have to go get that validated with the overall network architecture team, okay? And then bring that once we have what we want to deploy. Once they agree to that, once we want to deploy, we'll validate that with the SIG architecture. But we won't start doing any work until we have the validation of the overall network architecture or the SIG automation. Sorry, SIG automation piece.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting this together. Yeah.
Hi, Tim. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. First of all, like everybody else, thank you so much, Tim. You have put the structure together. You have made sure that we set these meetings, and you have finished everything very well. Now, driving the meeting, lots of ideas are coming for you. I have just one more idea, which just means that we all want to deliver something concrete that is basically useful for all of us. I wanted to join some of these meetings to develop a better perspective and a stronger understanding of the incremental milestones in the evolution of the SMO. So coming from a service provider's voice, and the reason I'm asking you this is because we would not deploy SMO in one day. Maybe there is an incremental approach. So in our leadership, there was a question raised that what is it from the SMO that we need before the others? So in a large number of telcos right now, there is a first use case is site deployment, because the new network functions are evolving and now they're improving the technology stack. So maybe the first element is to remove the existing servers-based RAN and transition that into CNF-based RAN. When we do that, at which stage do we really need to worry about so many sites and the management of clusters which are diversely distributed across that number of sites becomes a problem? Then the cloud management functions becomes critically important for us. At which stage do we really need to care about the RIG functionality? I think the RIG functionality is probably something that needs to come after we have completed and perfected the base automation of deployment, base configuration, bringing the site up in a fully software driven way. Then we probably worry about optimizing the workloads and making sure that the RIG functionality is evolving there too. So the time-wise incremental breakdown of that view, which is driven by the business requirement, I think would be one way for us to structure our focus and drive the use cases, which would incrementally go into R3 and beyond like that. Does that make sense, Tim, what I'm trying to explain?
Yeah. So again, I think, I tried to introduce this before because this is a big issue in terms of just ORAN integration. And we're going to have to do what I call a crawl, walk, run, a multi-release piece, right? And so when you start talking about the SMO, it's in general, right? There's we've got blessings in terms of, there's the OSC group that actually has pieces of the SMO already functioning, so we can do things. They have some proof of concepts of certain functions already there, and so we'll be juggling balls that we'll look to our partners, whether it's OSC or OAI or something we want to do from Nefio itself, like for the cloud enablement. But we'll be looking towards those partners when they're looking time to time, when they're ready to see how that is used within Nefio. You talked about I believe the non-real-time RIC as part of the SMO. I think when what we heard from last week was that at least for 2024, what I call short term, the things that we're looking for 2024 was that there was a deployment of an SMO and there was a POC where FOCOM and NFO were actually implemented using Nefio or enabled using Nefio functions and operators, right? And I can let Seishu speak to those because those were what I Certainly the second one is what I heard from Seishu. So I think what we're doing, Sen, is we're starting to get into this, right? And please do just chime in what you're looking for, because again, like you, what I'm looking for is something demonstrable. This is something that we would be able to demonstrate and see at the end of the release periods. Does that make sense?
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. Yes,
Yep.
it does.
Ravi?
Hi, hi, Tim. Thanks for shaping this effort. So I just probably comment on what Sana said. I mean, a good starting point for if you're looking at the use cases, right? I mean, looking at what are the low-hanging fruits we could realize. I mean, every working group, whether it is working group 2, I mean, everything in ORAN is driven using use cases, right? Working group 1 has the the responsibility for the architecture and use cases, and then that trickles down. I mean, that would be a good starting point to look at what are the use cases that operators are interested from an ORAN perspective, and kind of rank those use cases, whether it is coming from a non-real-time break or from a near real-time break, or it could be from a working group 6 where there are probably dozens of use cases related to cloud, infra management, orchestration, and so on. So I think that would be probably a good starting point to kind of identify those set of use cases which probably would make sense in a short term versus long term.
So,
And
Ravi,
yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, right? But I have not seen any discrete use cases, and it may be wrong, from the network architecture team that discusses ORAN or the RAN integration.
No,
If
it
I'm
is
wrong,
not.
then
No, the effort
okay.
has not.
Okay, and that's why I'm saying that. That's why I started doing this, was saying, let's seed the network architecture group with identifying what we would demonstrate, the objectives that we want to demonstrate from this group, because honestly, this is the group that's at the interested piece. There's operators that we'll get validation from, but excuse me, just a second here. We'll get, but this is where we'll start doing those story identifiers that you're looking for. We have to take these guys and we have to verify them with certainly the operator community, but the network architecture community at large, right? And so that's what I was saying. I don't think we're there yet, but we've got the people in place within this team. At least we can give the seed to the network architecture team. Does that make sense, Ravi?
Yeah, it is. But I was just trying to understand Sana's kind of when she said use cases. Isn't she referring to the use cases that it's already been kind of at least not been probably fully realized through all the APIs and all, but at least have been kind of well articulated in ORAN. Is that something internally when you look at ORAN? Isn't that the starting point, logical starting point?
Then I think that was to you.
Okay, Ravi, yes, you're right. The exact starting points I know very clearly for my organization, and I'm trying to assess what other telcos have to say. And you're right. We need to basically discover those requirements and those use cases with the larger community. And Tim has already mentioned that in slide number 4, his intent is to gather that kind of feedback. So one way logistically to move forward, Tim, would be to present this work a little bit in the SIG architecture session and leave the slide open for comments and notes. Maybe ask the telco community to put their 2024 use cases. What is your organization focusing on for the ORAN in 2024? I will also take a stab at that in additional and put a few use cases. With that list of use cases in front of you, I think that will steer some of the direction to basically funnel into this and prioritize even the sub bullets within this work in 2024.
Yeah, so then what I can do is certainly on the Slack channel, in the network architecture, I could show them, I could point them to this and ask them to put what they want to see in 2024, right?
Perfect.
I started with this because this is what people had, but yeah, I'll be glad to do that, Sana.
Perfect. And we'll make sure we give you the slot in SIG architecture meeting. Remind them, make sure that they contribute, and we'll bring this up there as well.
All right. So with this, from this group,
If I may just
Oh.
add one more point to that.
Yes,
Actually,
Sashi.
Sanna, just before you were joining, and me and our team were a little early to the meeting, and we were discussing this too. Team, again, I want to stress on the point on the OSC part, because certain operators whom we see in the OSC are not part of the NIFIO. Sanna, just to add to that point, which is very vital, which Ravi also raised, right? So it's better to take it to larger audience, and me and Tim were also talking about this to take it to larger group of the operators, okay, whom we also see in OSC, by the way.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, Tim, I'm again corroborating what we just talked about sometime before. So what we were just discussing was, as part of this, if we also take this initiatives, right, to the OSC group and also the ORAN group, which is equally interested in the ORAN part of it, right? They are also equally interested, but maybe they're not active in the NFO part of it, like the CMCC, AT&T, just to talk about. I mean, a few of the companies, there are many others like that. So it'll be good to also get the feedback, early feedback in it, and we will actually have the holistic picture of the direction, or maybe we also get some suggestions which may be equally important for us to take it on, right? So perhaps we can also do that in the long run, and that way we'll have extra information which can be taken back to the work group 1 and further to the TSC of NIFIO also. Does it make sense, guys?
Yeah.
And Tim, you want to add anything on top of it from what we
Yeah, it's
discussed?
because we also have another partner. There's to let you guys know, there's actually, OAI, OSC, and the NEPIO community is partnering together because we're going to be using assets from OSC, assets from OAI, and we're going to be developing some assets probably within NEPIO itself, the NEPIO community. So it's important to get their input as well. And as Seshu said, we'll be taking these out to them. But I want to be clear, guys, is that this is a NEPIO community project, and so for me, we'll let these other organizations provide input, obviously, and comment on what we have. But ultimately, it's the network architecture one. That community is to me, at least I think it is the one that kind of gives us the direction. I don't think they're going to have any issue if the OSC says, "Hey, we'd really like to do this," right? But they may, but I think that's the larger community that we need to make sure that we're compliant, or that we meet their expectations. If that makes sense, Seshu.
Yeah, of course, Tim. I'm totally on that. I was just trying to say the extra help that we could get, but it doesn't mean that will be suggestion. As I said, I was stressing on the point of suggestions, right? Not the guidance itself, but not the final decision is again with the TSC of here.
Yeah,
that's true.
And what I don't want to do is the other thing is I'm gonna try to sandbox this, guys. I know I sound like a jerk sometimes, but I'm gonna try to sandbox this bit so that we're not here in March still talking about objectives, right? Because I think it's important that we get down. We say what we kind of want. We objective. We get some socialization, and then we get down. While we're getting that socialization, we get down to these epics and stories identifications, right? And we start then looking at the deployment architecture pieces that I talked about before. So if I seem like a jerk, it's because I'm just trying to keep us moving forward. And I take no offense if you call me a jerk. Bala?
Yeah, thanks. Seshu, thanks for bringing that good point about the cross-pollination and coordination between the groups. That's very important as we move along. So, and one more thing, I think we just talked about presenting this in the SIG architecture main meeting, and also presenting this in the Slack and asking the priorities of what the telcos want to see in 2024. But I would like to bring one point here. They may be, telcos may be further along the line what Nefio is at this point of time, or they may want to see something which we may not be ready for. For example, let's say if they want to see point number 3 here, like ORAN OAM function and implemented using an Nefio one young operator, that could be their wish list, but that may not be the logical starting point for us to do. For example, for us, logical starting point may be workload IMS and ORAN, the DMS profile. That may be our logical starting point. I'm just giving an example. Not, this may not be a good example, but saying that we may have to strike a balance between what the telcos want and how we want to push these features into the product in a logical sense.
Yeah.
So
Basically, what
that's
you're
just-
saying, Bala, what you're saying is wish list versus the reality, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, in short, that's exactly what you're saying. And I totally agree to that. That's important. That's very important.
Yeah, we need to strike a balance there, satisfying the
Otherwise,
demand. How we want.
Yeah, so there's a couple of, you know, points to that, right? There is, again, we've had partners. So the partners that we're looking at, if you're talking like OAI for NF deployment, the partner may not be ready for a certain period. So we might have to wait and say, okay, we understand. I hear you. We're going to put this into, and that's why I put the crawl, walk, run in place. We're going to slot this maybe in second half of 2024, based upon whatever that is, right? There's also same thing with OSC. They may very well not have something that we're looking for, maybe a non-real-time rich or something. They got that stuff. I'm just expressing that we're also dependent upon our partners as well, right? When we do this, the other thing that we're bound by, to be honest with you, is I'm a big proponent of commitment, right? So if we don't have the capability to do this, the commitment to do this within the community or within the partner organizations, that'll be something that we would have to defer until we can obtain that commitment, right? So those will be questions that we'll ask. Basically, after we start identifying these, by the time that we're done identifying these user stories and applying them to releases, we will know whether we have the partners capabilities to do it, as well as the capacity and the commitment to do that within the Nepio community, right? Last thing I want to see is someone come in here and put some objective on us that that there's no way that we can meet it because either our partners aren't able for it or we don't have the capabilities in terms of resources within Nepio to handle it in a certain release.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And as an open source community, we will welcome their contribution as well if they want to come and contribute. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and that'll probably be the big thing is particularly when we start assigning these to releases, I'll be trying to make sure that we've got the commitment people so that we can complete that. Because the last thing I want to do, I've run a couple open source projects like this. Last thing I want to do is make a commitment to the industry and not be able to meet that commitment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So from this team, this is what I heard people as they came up to me. Others might have had it. So let's just go through these real quick. And again, it's free for commenting, and I'll change whatever it is. But so Seishi, let's talk about the SMO piece first for 2024. Could you talk a little bit about what the OSC capabilities are in visions that you want to see going forward for the short term? I captured these two, but I wasn't sure if that was it.
I mean, you are asking me a topic which I can take the entire hour, by the way, because
see if you can do it in like 10 minutes.
yeah. I'll try to do it much faster. Okay, let me put it this way. The first and foremost thing for the SMO part is the disaggregation. I mean, right now, we know the focus of the Nepio, I mean, of the ORAN was being bottom up, right? By bottom up, we mean, I mean, of course, coming from RAN side of it, they were mainly looking at the way the network functions could be brought into picture, the way they could be meeting the latency, the bandwidth throughput and all. So orchestration piece has been the one which actually, we don't have a work group. Let's put it this in the ORAN, we don't have a work group dedicated for orchestration itself. It's actually fitting between different work groups, right? That's how it is. So what we are looking at OSC is, can we have a feedback loop back to ORAN Alliance, trying to see if we can actually have this. That's one part of it from the standard organization feedback loop I'm talking about. Okay, that's one part of it. The other thing coming from deployment is inventory management is something which is very critical for us right now. I'm talking the functionalities here. Okay, I think that's asked also, right? Not just deployment also, right? You are also talking the functionality, isn't it, Tim? In this part of it, the question.
Well, my question is broader because I think you get stories that go down, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'm
the
giving
question
epic.
is good. Yeah. So the question is,
Hmm.
is it our intent to take the SMO assets from OSC and deploy them using Nefio GitOps configuration
Okay.
data,
Okay.
all those
Okay.
principles. Is that
Okay.
what we're looking to do in the short term?
Uh,
And I'm also I don't know if Sana's still on or Bala, but and others, is this something we want? Is this of importance that we want to do in 2024?
I see Ravi and Alexia have raised their
Ravi,
hand.
Yeah. So this is a comment I had in the deck too. So I could not understand those two those two objectives actually, because because Bala mentioned about the three swim lanes. The idea is that you want to develop controllers and operators that fundamentally makes the automation of either infrastructure management or the network function lifecycle management, configuration automation, all that in the southbound kind of kind of more driven through Kubernetes and all its artifacts, rather than handling the SMO, which is more like one-time installation kind of thing, right? So I mean, you could do it. That's what I said. Theoretically, you can develop APIs to even kind of drive the SMO, but is that the purpose? I mean, I don't think you want, because we have always see Nephew as a domain orchestrator. So it means something that the SMO will consume to drive things that it wants to handle at scale, right? So I'm not sure about these two objectives and why maybe looking at kind of deploying SMO functions using Nephew.
yeah. So the first question I had was that so if we have SMO assets, the first one, let's just take them one at a time, right? And there might be others. That's why I was asking Seshu. Was the first one was just saying, hey, look, I have an SMO, a set of functions within SMO, however OSC has defined that. Do I want to create, as you said, do I want to create the operators, controllers to enable the deployment of that using Nepio? That was all that was intended to do. It was just like we're doing, free 5GC, right? That's the same type of deployment. We're not touching what is comprised in the core. We're not changing any of the architecture. We're not implementing AMF functions within the AMF that is aligned with the Nepio principles. We're not doing any of that. So this was, and what you're suggesting, and I have no issue with that, Ravi, is that they may says, hey, look, we only do like onesies of these things, so it may not make sense to have that as a piece. And so I'm just asking the group if indeed that's the case, and I'm asking Seishu if that's indeed what his intention was. So I see Alexis, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Tim. I do also have, I want to open up the discussion, but I don't know if this is an ordered list, and I don't, if it's not, or if
No,
it
it's
is,
not a priority. It's just a bag of
okay.
I want to see.
So there is one thing that is not in there that I think we need to tackle in the very short term, and I think it will address some of the question that Ravi just shared, is that ORAN architecture mapping on Nephew. let's try to define maybe some artificial boundaries to start with, but I think we need to define them before we jump into some implementations. Right now, we're heads down into, what it is that we want to see in terms of deployment, but maybe we should just step back and align on that's the ORAN architecture, that's the Nephew architecture, and this is where, in that short term, this is what we want to tackle. Because right now there is a lot of things in there. It goes all across the ORAN architecture, and I think it will be probably beneficial for the community if we can, focus a specific area in a specific release. Again, I don't want to narrow things down too much, but I think focus will help us deliver things faster, whereas spreading ourselves thin across SMO, NF, and OCloud all at the same time from an ORAN Nephew standpoint we will take a couple of releases before actually achieving something. So I just want to be mindful about how much we want to take on, and first having a common baseline understanding of what it means ORAN and Nephew.
Okay, so help me understand. You're saying align on the ORAN architecture and the what?
Basically, map the ORAN architecture to
Okay.
Nephew, and
Yeah.
we did a little bit of that in the first meeting that we had, and I think you presented a little bit
Yep.
of that last week.
Right.
But I think it's worth having probably a couple of meetings, hopefully one, I don't know, but on that. So,
Okay.
and the goal not to have that perfect mapping, but just to have a good enough understanding as this group altogether, so we know that for the short term, okay, that's the assumption we're going to take on that mapping. Maybe we'll evolve, but that way, once we have that assumption that is clear for everyone, then the role of Nephew and SMO and things of the sort will help us take some decisions about what we want to do in the short term, I think.
All right. If that's going to lend clarity, then I think we can take a session or two to do that mapping and have that conversation. Joseph, you had your hand up.
Yeah, hello. Yeah.
Hi.
So, yeah, first of all, thanks, Tim, I think, for scheduling this and for arranging this meeting, and also putting up so much material is very useful to get started. So my comment here is, I think I agree to what Alexis is saying, and also Ravi was saying about it. Is I think that there are three communities I think involved, right? Or four right now, at least as of now. I think we need to define scopes here. So one is the specification or an alliance specification from where we derive the requirements at least. And other open source communities like ORAN SC and OAI, these are communities that develop code. So we need to actually understand what their plans are, like in terms of ORAN SC SMO. I think Seishu's there would give clarity on what are the components they are also planning to implement. So if you see this third line bullet point here, FOCOM and NFO SMO to be implemented using Nephew. So maybe ORAN SE also has plans to implement these. So should it be implemented as part of Nephew community or ORAN SE community? So those segregation and scopes need to be clearly defined. Otherwise, we might end up redoing things in two different communities. So that scope clarity we should have before we start on any of these activities. So, and also, like you mentioned in the Nephew wiki, the architecture picture, I think we should start with that and try to map with ORAN architecture, like what Alexis is saying, and also then see those components that are defined in that architecture. Are they implemented in other communities, or they are having plans in the future to implement them, and we should be aligned with that as well. Right?
Okay. All right. So I think what we're saying is that you guys want to spend couple sessions on the mapping and getting clarity based upon the plans of the partners. I got that. Okay. we can do that. I mean, if that's going to make people feel comfortable, certainly, and help to drive the conversation. Santa, I think you're next.
Yes, I'm very happy that the things that were running in my mind are somehow touched and already getting in shape with the discussions happening. Tim, don't feel overwhelmed with the way we work in the community, because sometimes we propose an idea and there are 10,000 different ideas to support that better. I have had that overwhelming experience in SIG architecture, but eventually we'll all land on something together and we'll help you and we have to contribute with you on all the ideas. So I just quickly wanted to answer one question that I had in my mind when Ravi asked that question, that deploying an SMO function is a one-time activity. So Ravi, I think Tim's focus was basically create the road to the steps, not the goal. So this is not a goal for him, but I think that's one of the steps that he feels would enable us to get to the goals, like maybe discover the functionality of the FOCOM and the NFO eventually. So it was alarming to me as well, like, why is this written this way? But I then assumed that these are the side things that would enable us to get to the functional objectives of the relationship between the ORAN components and nephew and things like that. So I parked that in my mind like that. Maybe that's the list of things we have to do as a part of getting to that overall objective. The second point that I wanted to bring up, Tim, is basically aligned with what Alexei said and what Joseph said as well. I'll give you a little bit of background from a telco perspective. What happened in last 1 year in our organization? The ORAN Alliance evolved in the industry. Everybody felt, oh God, ORAN is something very critical for us. It's very critical for business objectives. We started working on the RFIs, RFPs with ORAN vendors. When the responses started coming in for those RFPs, we found that there is a repeated pattern of the vendors' products in which the same vendor products that they were offering for network slicing, like our NSSMF components, have a heavy overlap with the SMO functions here and there. Then we saw that some vendors have the exact same products that they were doing for the cloud, like the NFCO and the GVNFM, have a very strong correlation with the existing SMO architecture. So the group in my organization, the SMO group, was by the leadership was changed to basically converge with an existing orchestration group that brought me into the picture, because I was working on service orchestration. I have been working on that since last 6-7 years for TELUS. And we all got together and we felt, let's just look at the functional capabilities of ORAN. What is the real goal for this particular block? And once we have a collective understanding of that function, we can easily identify if that function and the capabilities already exist in the world with some other acronym or some other name. Is there an overlap with that? How do we drive a unified common roadmap going from the ORAN SMO functions to the existing world of orchestration? So that was one exercise that we did, which is very similar to kind of finding the scope of what we need to accomplish in Nephew. So if we drive one session in which we just open the ORAN architecture and review the capabilities of every functional block and what's done for that functional block in the other standard bodies, we'll see, okay, this is very well done. It's already existing. We could probably derive some gaps in that picture, and we can identify these are the Nephew functions, and potentially Nephew could do this better. If we believe that we can do that part better and it's really relevant to our focus, we will drive that in the other communities, because that's also the goal of Nephew being an LFN project. We will take those ideas to ORAN. We can probably propose that. Let's do it that way. But we need to identify those things in which Nephew is going to be really strong, and we can drive the industry with that. We have enough representation on this group, and we have enough strength being LFN graduated project that we could even push some of these ideas in respective forums. But of course, we are not reinventing the wheel. We need to see where our strengths will benefit the industry and community. And that exercise is very important.
Okay, yeah, I think we can do that. So when we go through this, we can look at each of the functional blocks that exist within ORAN including some of the advanced TR work that they're doing and what the current OSC has
Right.
implemented. Because there's a, again, OSC has implemented certain functional blocks that, right now the specs just look like one big brick, right? So, so we can probably come up with some of that and discuss it. That's where that's where I thought that's what Seshi was getting towards when he says, hey, look, I want to take in our functional blocks that were in the SMO of OSC for FOCOM and NFO and actually implement that using some of the Nefio features. So, but we can step back and have that conversation. That's
I
no
think
big
that
deal.
would be a very interesting session. Maybe one
Okay.
session for everyone to share their thoughts, and we will take notes like a whiteboard, like we're doing, would establish a common understanding with this group. And
So
I will
Seish,
learn a lot.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So Seisha, what I'll do is I'll create a slide that's got like the SMO decomp functions in it, and then you could verify if if those align with the OSC, and that way we can see if there's some gap there. Right?
Sorry, yeah, Tim, exactly. The point which I was raising, in fact, I was just talking about the point and I was clarifying whether we are in right track. I was actually one step ahead to that. I mean, to exactly the point which Sana, Joseph, Alexei were talking about, right?
Okay.
So where I was coming from, my point of view was to make sure that we find the gaps, okay, from both the points, because I was actually excited because I've already seen Nefio and I've also seen OSC, right? Being part of both the communities from day one. I would not say OSC from day one, at least being the SMO people from the OSC and from Nefio participation from day one of it. I could see that Nefio is a solution for most of the problems which I could see from the OSC. Okay, that's no second thought on that. And wherever it's applicable, I have already started work on that. And that's where Alexei and me were working on it individually without even talking across the globe, right? That is the IMS and FOCOM and NFO. NFO being a secondary thing for me, to starting point will be FOCOM. Okay, that is where we have to focus first. Again, this is in line to what Joseph was talking about, that, and also Ravi was talking about, right? The effort which we put in these activities, will it be something which will be only used by Nefio, or sorry, only used by ORAN, or it'll be platform level, or if I take Nefio as a platform. So what I say is, any of this that you're trying to do will be a use case, because I see, again, I put it, my thought of this is, Nefio for me is a platform. ORAN is one of the use cases. It is validating me to check whether my functionality is in line, so that when someone takes the functionality and adopts in the commercial, they'll be having a valid proof that it has been done according to this thing, and this has been validated using this use case of ORAN. Okay, I'll put it this way, if it makes sense, right, guys?
Yeah.
Again, yeah, sorry, Tim, you were saying something.
No, I said, yeah, I understood. I'm sorry, affirming. I got to do that on mute next time.
No problem. Sure. I mean, I was in the flow, so I just wanted to make sure we are aligned. The other thing is, of course, again, I'm totally in line, and that's where I was coming from inventory. The reason why I was mentioning inventory is because that is one of the critical pieces for the success of ORAN, for example, and how we can, I mean, we can also see if Nefio can actually solve the problem. Again, I'm saying if here, because inventory management need not come from Nefio. Okay, if it can come, well and good. If it need not come, we have to see, okay, this part of it is not in the scope. Something else, the orchestration piece we have to see. And again, that's the same thing which Alexei was talking about, right? Taking the Nefio architecture, mapping it with Nefio, I mean, putting it Nefio on top of it and seeing how many of these problems can be solved from Nefio, what can be, what cannot be. If whatever is solved, I mean, if once we highlight those whitelisting projects, which we can actually do, in that, what can be done in short term, what should be done long term. And again, that is in line to what you are talking about, the stories and epics, right, Tim? To have it as across multiple releases, that can be done.
That's
so
right.
What can be done short term, what can be long term? Again, for that we also require the commitment of the community itself, right? Because it cannot be done individually by a company. It should be community effort, right? So that is what we have to also take. So these are the points which I was trying to put in. I'm glad that we are talking of the same thing. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So Bala. So guys, just to let you know, we've got about 7 minutes. So Bala.
Yeah, thanks. I think some of the points that's already covered. I just summarized that. So I understand where Ravi is coming from. Nefio was, the intention of Nefio is a domain orchestrator. So that's where he's coming from, that's something we manage by SMO itself. But SMO itself could be deployed using Nefio as well. So Nefio is not just a management tool. From an orchestration perspective, it can also be used. The principles could also be used to deploy any software component. So the use cases of Nefio itself is beyond telco. So that's so from the and also SMO is, I don't think SMO, even though it's slowly changing, it's not a static workload. Obviously, it's just like any other software. It will undergo the regular software lifecycle upgrades, patches, things like that. All those things could be deployed using the GitHub principles as well. So the GitOps principle as well. So from that perspective, yes, it can be, SMO could be, and is a candidate to be used for deployment using Nefio principles. But obviously with everything else here, we have to define the priority for that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it will come down to, right?
Yeah.
Because again, this is just things that I heard, right? As a bag, and it will weed itself out, right? You know,
Absolutely.
in terms of maybe it's pushed to a later release or something.
Absolutely.
So, Santa, final one, and then what I'll do is I'll do a wrap up. Santa, your hand.
That may be a stale hand. That may be a stale hand. I think.
I'm still here. Sorry. Yes, it is a stale hand. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. So I think what we have then, guys, is we have this task that we want to put in front of us. I'll map that for discussions, and I'll start something that we could put together for that mapping. We had some of this stuff already in the planning, but we used the SMO as a as a blob, basically, with a real non-real-time RIC. And then but we'll expand that out a little bit more, right? And we'll expand out like the O Cloud with the IMS and the DMS and put all those interfaces in place. I can build one of those diagrams, and then we can then start talking about overlaying Nefio on top of that, right? And use that planning slide, you know, just as a basis to start.
Right. Tim, I had started working on a slide, which is shared with the community. You can take that slide and basically edit the boxes and arrows and everything. That might save some of your time, just a suggestion. I can share the link to that diagram with you.
Yeah, if you would, then just
Yes. Feel free to break it, rebuild it, or however
Sure.
you want. It's just a starting point.
Yeah, and that'd be great, because that way, just give me a put it on Slack, and
Yes, I
I'll
will.
use that as a
It's
start.
already shared with the community, so you won't have to start working on the access part of it. So at least it's already shared. You can
Okay.
just go ahead and start working like a whiteboard on that.
All right, so the next meeting is next Wednesday, and we'll start with this task. Okay, and is there anything else before we leave?
A big thanks to you, Tim, for driving this and for making sure that we are all discussing this here.
No worry, happy to do it.
Awesome.
Okay, guys, we will
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
see you next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.